Hey guys, Steve here. Today we're going to take a look at a new destroyer, the Cossack Tier 6 British destroyer. Vying on the screen here, I got Bay, I got Otago. Same build I've been using recently, kind of for every ship in the British line. Seems to be working pretty well in my opinion. Gonna do things a little bit different here. I got a bit of a quick hitter of a game that we can kind of compare the ship to the Jervis and talk about it and introduce the ship. And then the second game is a little bit more representational, a little bit longer, and we can maybe call that game and describe how the ship plays in action. So, first off, right out of the gate, some people are complaining, oh, the ship's been nerfed. This thing had 2 more turrets, I believe, on the PC, and then they look at the ship before it's even released and say, what the heck, this thing is a piece of garbage. That's the same approach a lot of people took in World of Tanks. I was kind of late to that game. Only played it for about 6 months or so before this game came out. But I always noticed that approach that a lot of people took, and I didn't really ever agree with it because this is not the PC game. It never was the PC version of the game. And yes, they're starting with, how a ship plays on the PC or how it is designed on the PC and then going from there. But they might take a look at either the PC's version's performance and say, wow, it's a little bit too strong on that one. Maybe we better tone it down. Or they might just think, we need to make this change or that change just to fit in better with, the ecology of this particular game. You can agree with that approach. You can disagree with that approach. Both options are completely valid, obviously. I just want to be upfront with you and say that's not how I approach a new ship. It's interesting to look at the PC and research it and see how it plays there. But there's a lot of ships that if you look at how they perform on the PC and then look at our version, they already aren't lining up, even though maybe the changes such as removing turrets isn't as noticeable in terms of how the ships are actually performing. It might vary quite a bit from version to version. So anyway, this is my approach. I just take the ship that's given to me by Wargaming. I play it. I've played this one 10, 12 games. This is, of course, an early impressions video like I normally do when the new premiums come out. And then, I play the ship and I say, is this thing worth a damn or not? In my opinion, I've been having a lot of fun playing this ship. And we can compare it to the Jervis here in a second. I actually think there's dramatic differences. I mean, it's not just a straight-up Jervis clone with a little bit of a tweak to the torpedo systems. There's quite a bit of differences in the ship's stats, as we'll take a look at here. So, I think it plays fine. I think the Jervis's damage potential is higher because you have 10 torps per reload cycle on that one. Here you only have 4, and we'll discuss the torpedo system here in a minute. But if you're not landing those torps, I think this one actually performs a little bit better. So the Jervis, my main qualm with that ship was always the 1.5-minute reload. That's the main thing I really don't like about that. This one's got a 90-second reload. Yes, the number of torps is smaller, but you can see here, for example, on this Colorado, we launched a salvo, hit a lot of them on there. But let's imagine we're in the Jervis and we launched one salvo, hit a bunch of them, and then the second salvo, we missed that completely. Now, we're not going to be able to do this and get these torps on target before this guy dies in the Jervis because we're going to still be reloading here for about another 20, 30 seconds, whatever it is. So I personally tend to like my destroyers' torpedoes cycling as fast as possible, and that's usually how I want to set them up, at least the ones that are focused on torpedoes. So that aspect of it, I like a bit more. You get 500 more health on the Cossack. Gun stats from range, reload, turret traverse, HE, AP damage, fire chance, all the same across the board. Torpedoes, we've already mentioned 120-second reload on the Jervis, 96 on this one, and then the 2x5s and the 1x4 on this one. But we get 900 more damage per torpedo on this one, 2 extra kilometers, 10-kilometer range, 1 extra knot in the water, and the difference in reaction time is minimal. I got 6.51 on my build on the Jervis, 6.41 on this one. That's not a stat that's available in the game. You got to do a little bit of math, but that just roughly shows how long the torps are visible on the person's screen before they actually reach the ship, whether they hit it or miss it. So everything about the Cossack's torps are better except for the number of torps, which of course is a major difference. Now keep in mind with the British torps, you have the narrow spread, or the single launch spread, which you have quite a bit of control. Typically when I'm using that, I'm stacking them, as you'll see in this game, or we've already seen in this game, and then I think we'll see some more in the next game. And then the quote-unquote widespread, which is kind of a step between your traditional narrow spread and your traditional widespread. I like it more than the regular widespread, which I don't normally use. But at range, there's going to be gaps in these things. So you're going to have to keep that in mind. We're adding on 2 extra kilometers on this thing. Yes, that's nice, and, extra range in your torps is never going to hurt anything. But the further the torps go from your launch point, the less effective they are. The bigger the gap in between each torp is going to be. But you can see on the screen there, I mean, they're even at that range. It's not a long range shot there, but they're still pretty closely grouped together. But if you just keep an eye on them in the background, you'll see they start to spread out a little bit and big gaps develop. So that's kind of always been a knock on the British torps. There's nothing to do about it. If you got opportunities to use the single torp launcher, that's always the best option in terms of hitting those shots and getting the damage. Speed the same, 590 turn circle on the Jervis, 610 on this one, 3.8 rudder shift on the Jervis, 3.2 in this one. I'm not 100% sure I have steering gears on the Jervis. I guess I could have looked prior to recording this, but I didn't. And then detection, 5.6 on the Jervis for surface or sea detection, 5.2 on the Cossack. So pretty close to a half kilometer better in terms of your detection. And then I'll talk briefly about the consumables because there are differences there. Jervis, you have, of course, your traditional British smoke. Here you have 2 charges. They appear to be the Akatsuki smokes, at least according to my stats. You got 20-second deployment, 85 seconds where the cloud actually exists, and then 4-minute reload on the smoke. And again, 2 charges. Engine boost. You do have an engine boost on the Cossack, which is the only British cruiser thus far. And that's the standard engine boost. And then there's minor tweaks to the sonar. The torp detection on the Cossack is 0.2 kilometers better than the Jervis, but the Jervis's surface detection is 0.3 kilometers better than the Cossack. So interesting kind of trade-off there. But you can see here the amount of stats that were tweaked and kind of the importance of the stats. They're not the same ships. The Jervis and the Cossack play differently, at least in my opinion. And again, the Jervis, when those torps are available, they're very nice. It's the biggest spread you can get at the tier, of course, but they do take a long time to cycle through. Obviously, there's no twist and track on either British destroyer build, so you'll note I don't have that on the screen. Here, though, this one's more of a representational game. It's not a barn burner. I haven't actually had any really home run games, 140, 50k type damage games on this one yet. I can't remember what this one comes out to, but I think it kind of shows a little bit of everything, strengths and weaknesses of this ship. Another difference that you're not going to find in the stats is keep an eye on the diagram here as we're turning. The firing angles on this are abysmal. To get all 3 guns on target, you basically have to be pretty dang broadside. I did play a game as the Jervis just to compare the firing angles. That one's not amazing by any means, but it's definitely better firing angles than you're going to have on this. So it doesn't matter if you're going away from the target, towards the target, you're going to have to be pretty much broadside to get the full firepower on the target. So keep that in mind. Of course, if you're kiting away, the front 2 guns, that's where the 2/3 of your firepower is on this setup. So a little bit easier to fight when you're fighting the target in terms of raw damage output. Although that second turret does seem to be pretty accessible. I don't have a lot of trouble with that one. It's either the front or the back turret that's usually obstructed. And I forgot to mention, this thing actually does have secondaries, which is a little bit bizarre. I think that's what's in front of that back turret that kind of obstructs it. And these ones aren't 360. The back one's not 360-degree rotator like the Jervis is. I don't think the front one is either. I think just that second turret. So a little bit less flexibility in terms of going back and forth compared to the Jervis and the Lightning, which have those really nice 360 turrets. The secondaries, I've actually been in a few games where I've been close enough. It usually happens where you're in a smoke and the secondaries will go off, or if you get into a close encounter fight with the destroyer, sometimes the secondaries will come into play. And there you can see there's a long range torp strike. That sometimes that's the value of the longer range torps, is even though you miss the target that you're trying to hit, those targets that are in the background either might be aiming down the sights, not paying attention, or maybe the torps don't get detected and they just kind of go all the way down the range and end up killing, or at least hitting, the target that's not expecting them. So that's not going to happen in the Jervis right there. Aoba's coming in hot. We need to get rid of that one, so I'm not really fretting being detected here. We got most of the other ships that can shoot us at longer range. Well, the Warspite's pushing in, so that's why we go ahead and pop the smoke here. And you can see here, as soon as we pop that smoke, the CNOP or whatever it is behind me that I was kind of hoping for support, he's directly behind the smoke cloud. So usually, this is why I was kind of trying to hold off on using that smoke until the Warspite looked like he was about ready to blast me, because then I was kind of forced to use it. But you got to be conscious of where you are relative to your support ships as a destroyer. And if you do put the smoke down in front of them, you're kind of taking both you and them out of the game. So always keep that in mind. Obviously, it just didn't work out in this case. But the Warspite does pop up here, and now we're going to go ahead and switch to the narrow spread, I believe. At this range, the quote-unquote widespread would be fairly effective. You could probably get 3 of the 4 on the ship if it remained perfectly broadside. But now that he's maneuvering, we're going to just sit here, use the smoke, try and get a fire going on him, and then see if he goes back broadside and gives us an opportunity to go for some sort of a nuclear strike, which is what I like to call the single stacked torps, because they all hit. If they hit, they all hit, and if they all hit, the guy gets wrecked. So you can see he kind of turned out again. He probably expected the torps to be already launched. He kind of maneuvered. Then he didn't see him, and he's kind of now he's trying to disengage. And then once that happens, of course, he's in big trouble. Those are all going right for him. He's already got fires. Looks like the damage con's out of commission, and that's going to go ahead and take the Warspite out right there. Now we're kind of evaluating the game at this point. This is obviously capture the base, so there's no objectives that we need to be concerned about capturing, but our next kind of priority is getting that other destroyer off the map here. I think it's a Minsk, yeah, so even though he's not a major torp threat, I mean, he's going to suicide torp this guy, I believe, and get away with it. So we do want to get rid of this guy just because he does threaten our capital ships, and we would like to get rid of all the destroyers, which kind of takes the eyes and ears off the enemy's map. So we're going to wait for him. It looks like he's coming around on the map, and we're hoping he's going to pull out in front of us and then do what we can to blast him. Now once again, you see I switched the guns from the right to the left, and the front two, I guess, have no problem swinging over there, but the back one has to go all the way around, so you do have to keep that in mind when you're adjusting your sides. We were shooting at the Minsk. I don't think we actually ended up hitting them, but that's alright. It's important to support those ships that are trying to deal with the destroyers. I always talk about the destroyers' roles. I think spotting is the most important. Contesting caps, whether directly capturing them or putting pressure on them, is probably second. Dealing with destroyers, whether straight up fighting them or helping to spot them, locate them, and put pressure on those destroyers. Every destroyer has its strengths and weaknesses vis-a-vis other destroyers. You got to know what those are and play accordingly. But I think helping get rid of those destroyers is kind of the most, one of the most important functions. And you can see torp damage, even though we've gotten a fair amount of torp damage this game. It's not something I like to preach as a main considerations. It's one of those icings on the cake type of deal. CNOP's guns, we can see they're not pointed towards us. I was trying to get him kind of a kick in the rear. He slowed down inadvertently to dodge those torps. I was hoping shooting at him would kind of startle him, get him to kick it in gear, and move forward into those torps. That's why I kind of took a risk, become detected there. Didn't work out, but we did have a fire going on him, at least briefly, or it looks like we still do. And we got minimal damage coming back our way. So we're going to let the detection drop back down. Now the thinking is I want to get on the cap and put pressure on there, both to pull them back towards the cap, stop them from accruing points, and take it from there. Belfast pushing in, though, causes a lot of problems. We're going to keep pinging him hopefully our team can take him out. And he takes a nice wicked shot there, which is really nice. But these cruisers, if you're ever a destroyer, capture the base or domination mode, if you're on the cap and a cruiser is pushing in aggressively towards you, you need to kind of get out of there. He's limiting the ability of you to do what you're trying to do. Once in a while, you'll get away with it, trying to duke it out with the cruiser that's rushing you there. But more often than not, especially when there's not a lot of support ships from your team in the area, the cruiser can wreck you. So you always got to keep an eye on that, and that was my main consideration there. If the Belfast kind of dropped spot, my teammate wasn't shooting him, and he pushed in aggressively towards me, we were going to get the heck out of there, because we'd rather stay alive and continue to contribute to the fight rather than, die trying to fight him. And, I talk about it with Capture the Base a lot. Normally when I get on the cap, actually capturing the base is not my objective. If it happens, fine. But again, we're trying to just get more points, ensure our team the victory, and force the enemy team to respond. If they don't want to come back to defend the base, fine, we'll take the W. If they do come back, though, it kind of relieves the pressure on my team. You can see they're all still kind of huddled in the back, either turning around, having dealt with whatever they were dealing with, or they're just kind of, not that aggressive, and we're going to draw all the ships over here to kind of force them to continue to push in, which is what our team needs to be doing in this situation. So again, don't get on the cap and then die needlessly. You'd rather get off the cap, whether it's domination, whether it's capture the base. I mean, sometimes you have to get the cap and you got to take a risk, but usually you don't have to, and you'd rather get out of there than die doing so. Anyway, Molotov pushing in here, and now we're kind of forced to smoke. We are the ones spotting him, I believe. He is shooting his guns, though, so that expands his detection radius, and my teammates are temporarily spotting him. And they're doing a good job shooting him as well, so we're getting some support from the team. Here's a good example. We're just getting off the cap. I don't care, even if we get reset or not. It doesn't matter. If this thing's pushing into us, we need to get out of there, or he will kill us, so it's pretty basic. Now, as long as we have the smoke in between us, we might as well take some shots at him, right? And there you can see, just to get that third gun, look at the diagram, basically how broadside we had to be. Still continuing to overturn here, trying to utilize the smoke when possible. The plane is putting a little bit of a pressure on us, and the plane's actually spotting us there, so a little bit risky, but we do want to kill the Molotov, and he's getting relatively low, so if we can help out with dealing damage there, certainly not a bad option. As he's wrecking all our modules, lowering the health though, now that option kind of goes away, and we're just going to try and get him out of our blue ring on the map, the detection ring, and let our team deal with this guy. But again, staying alive, more important than capturing the base, because the Molotov, if he pushes into us, will kick the crap out of us 9 out of 10 times. That's how the game works. So as this one winds up, the Cossack, I enjoy it. I'll keep playing this ship. Whether or not it's for you, I don't know. Can you let go of what the PC version Cossack is and accept this one for what it is? If so, I think you'll like it. If you want to just strictly say, oh, the Jervis seems better because there's more torps, then you're probably not going to like this one either. But it's kind of like comparing the Benson to the Kid. I like the Kid more than the Benson. Whether I like the Cossack more than the Jervis, I'll let you know sometime in the future. But for now, I like it plenty. But that's all I can really tell you. Anyway, if you liked the video, please hit the thumbs up. New to the channel, consider subscribing. Questions, comments, leave below. And we'll see y'all later. All right, peace.